we go. This is the final film of the year for me. This is the final video, I mean. And it's another What the Hell Is This? And it's Jupiter Ascending. The Wachowskis' weirdo space opera that bombed horribly on release in 2015. It was delayed a few times before it came out, and it came out and everyone was like, what the hell is this? What were they making? What are they doing? Now, I saw absolutely this before, and I watched it recently on 4K to see it at its best. This is not the best 4K release, by the way. There's I feel they had it available in 4K, so they put it out in 4K, but it's not like, there's lots of Warner releases that look nicer in this film. But I got the 4K in a pack of buying a couple of 4Ks in a sale. So there you go. I didn't spend a fortune on it or anything. So Jupiter Ascending is like the Wachowskis' like notorious bomb. I mean, they've had failures before. I mean, had Speed Racer, which has got a lot of respect since then, and is now, I think, more culty. The follow-up to Speed Racer Cloud Atlas, I don't think it did great, but I think it was another really well respected film. I think it probably made money over time. I think it's one of those ones that will keep being seen because it's a well respected film. You know, some of those films don't make a fortune to start with. I mean, I don't think it even expected to. It's an art house film worth a decent budget, so that I would call that a success actually compared to what it could have been, and I think it was just like it was what it was. It did exactly what everyone probably expected it to do. But Jupiter Ascending was kind of the film that took the feet from them. They came back pretty quickly with Sense8 on Netflix, which was very well regarded. Now they've both transitioned from male to female. This was made when Lana had, but Lily hadn't. But that's... I'm not even trying to work out the years of which, because I can't remember. But this was like the film is... Because they still had the credit of the Matrix, even Speed Racer was well respected in Cloud Atlas. This one really did some damage to them, even though Lana's now coming back to do Matrix 4, which is coming out next year, apparently. We'll see with this stuff. But Jupiter Ascending is actually one of those ambitious films that I like. It failed in lots of ways. It's a problem. They made mistakes in this film. But they had ambitions. I mean, I think the ambition was to make a look at a Cinderella story where she took control of herself, but she still had to go back home at the end, you know, rather than take out the prince. So it's kind of like Wizard of Oz as well, where Dorothy goes on a great adventure and then has to come back home, but changed. I think that's the idea that they had for this one. But there was some script problems. But there's also, I think it was probably too much for one film that they had, but also the big problem they had, beyond the fact that they seemed to be pushing a lot together in one film, which I think caused some of the reshoots, was there was a miscasting. And that's the thing that cripples this film more than anything. When you're watching a film and someone's miscast, you're just watching, finding all the faults in the film. If you're watching a film where someone's properly cast, the little weirdness of a film doesn't matter. And so you accept the world more. I mean, if Star Wars was miscast, it looked really weird. But because it was perfectly cast, it didn't matter. The cast brought the world up. And this one, because it's miscast, even during the action scenes, you're not that invested compared to what you should be. And the basic miscasting is Channing Tatum. He's so miscast in this film. I've heard he's not a big fan of this film, but he's the biggest problem in the film by a long mile. He's playing this character who is a part dog, part man. But the idea of it's just genetics. Is the human basic humanity, and there's a lot of splicing, and some attributes of other animals are put onto people. So it's the subtly like Sean Bean's character has an affinity with bees because some part of his genetic makeup has a bee element to it. With Channing Tatum, it's a dog, so you're taking the characteristics of these animals, which is a cool idea. And also, you know Channing Tatum's miscast because when Sean Bean explains it all, it makes sense. Because he's well cast. He works really well. He just explains it in a very subtle way, and you buy it with him. He's just perfectly cast. Because there's a weirdness to him, his performance, and he knows he has to add a bit of oddity to it. But Mila Kunis is okay cast. I think the big problem with her is she's good at the working class feel, but she might be a bit too old. Like, it's meant to be someone who's naive and is discovering the world. It's a metaphor for discovering the world. But she's in her 30s, obviously, and she's playing a character in her 20s. And it feels like a younger actress would... The naivety of the character in certain places would have been more understandable. And in this film, because she's a bit older than she should be for the character, you sometimes look at her and go, why make this choice? You should know better. But if a younger actress made a choice, played the character and made those choices, it would be understandable. And you would see them learn from the experience. That's kind of the idea. But I think they also wanted an actress who could suggest someone who could be potentially villainous in the future or came from a character. Because the plot is she's a person who's the same genetic makeup as someone else who was this great industrialist. So they had to have someone who could suggest that too. I don't think there was an actor who could do both that plus play the kind of Cinderella part of someone who's naive. I think they should have just gone with finding someone naive and let the rest take care of itself later on. This casting didn't quite work because it underpinned, it took away the legs from the idea of she's naive at times and she makes these mistakes because she seems too old to make these mistakes. But it doesn't hinder the film that much. It hinders it in certain ways, but scene by scene, Mila Kunis is fine because she's an enjoyable actress. She knows what she's doing. It's just that she seems too old for that. I mean, if they'd got her like 5 years earlier, but she's a bit younger looking, it would have been fine. She would have just been confused and it would have worked. But I think it's just a case of she was too old for the part by the time they got into filming it. And that was the issue. But that's nothing compared to the disaster that is Channing Tatum. A man who looks like a teddy bear, basically. He's a big goof, really, as an actor. He's enjoyable in certain films, but he does not project animalistic rage. Like, at all. He's the least animalistic actor you can possibly find. And he's playing a guy who's dog genetics and he is meant to rages and is meant to feel a lot of passion. He does not project any passion ever in this film. You do not see in scene that you're meant to be feeling something. It's not there, like, at all, ever. I mean, some of the problems are writing where they're trying to do too much too quick. But a lot of it is because they're trying to do a kind of silent movie thing where a lot of it is suggested in the performance rather than what's been said. And it's just by the actions of the people doing things. But when you're miscasting these actors, does not possess the basic thing you need. That's a problem. And it feels like he's been cast because he was big at the time rather than... It was a kind of case of, you take him or you don't get the film made. It was that kind of feeling to him in this film. Because he was big at the time, really. And this is one of the films that totally took his legs away from him. And he's fine in certain films, but in this one, he does not project what the actual story suggests. He needs someone... It's basically a Wolverine character. So you need someone to suggest rage. You know, I think they were hoping he would do a kind of Hugh Jackman thing where he's a nice guy, but he can also do the rage thing. And he couldn't, like, at all. It was so bad. Every time he tried to show rage, it was like... Or try to show like animal cunning. There's all these scenes about how cunning he is and stuff like that. There's always a suggestion of he's cunning. But it never comes through. There's a lot of suggestions where he's a lot of guilt dealing with Sean Bean character. Well, Sean Bean's doing all the work in those scenes. So that doesn't come through. It's just every scene he's in that requires him to do more than just stand there. You can tell he's uncomfortable in this part. He just does not get the part. He does not get this film. And he shouldn't be there. They should have found someone else who could project, that kind of animal rage that this part really needed. This part really needed that. It's kind of doing V for Vendetta without someone who can actually talk well. Because it was famously V for Vendetta, they changed the actor early on, but because he was on a mask, it didn't matter. But because they could tell something was up, the performance wasn't right. At this point, he was a big star, and they couldn't get rid of him, but I'm sure as they were making the film, they were realising there was a problem. That he was not projecting anything that was needed in this film. Because I was trying to sell his next big action star, but it didn't work, at all. It really was a total failure. And I think basically if they got someone different, the film would have had a bigger footing, because I think all of that stuff would have fit into place. But I also think if they got someone Mila Kunis, someone younger, that part would work better, because you get the idea of the Cinderella story and how it doesn't quite work out the way you expect. You can do the right thing, but it might not, and save your family, but it might not be exactly what you want. There's a lot of that stuff in this situation where it's the casting just is missing. And the Russian family of Mila Kunis in it, it's a good idea that immigrants, illegal immigrants, so they can't get a footing in the area. So it's the idea of what happens to the poor people and what happens to them, and it's so they're always undercut. They're always this came a tragedy in Russia, and they can't really stay in Russia, and so they come to America. They're always illegal, so their mother, who's very educated, can't work where she should be working, which is in maths. She has to work as someone cleaning toilets. And there's that idea come through the idea of class system, and you see the class system and colonialism suggested through the villains, which is the two sons and the daughter of the character Mila Kunis's character has the same genetics as, and they've now split up the family business into three. Eddie Redmayne plays the main one, the biggest villain. Tuppence Middleton plays the daughter, who actually brings Mila Kunis's character in and gets her established as a reincarnation or the resurrection of this person, mainly to mess with her brother. All she has to do to mess with her brother is to be nice to this person and let him mess up himself. So she does it and sits back and lets it happen. The other brother, who's a manipulator and a seducer, tries to marry her, and that's the biggest problem in the film. His seduction scenes of her doesn't do enough to seduce her unless she was naive, and because Mila Kunis is too young, is too old to play naive that way, it comes across as weird. So the Cinderella thing doesn't work as well as it should because there's miscasting. That's the problem with the full film, is the two leads are kind of miscast, but one more than the other. And everything that would work in a kind of silent film way, which is you're sensing stuff from the acting performance but it's not said, isn't coming across, so you're seeing all the weird joints of the characters and the weird joints of the story, that if you were really into it, you would notice. Like the action scenes, if you were really into those characters, into the dynamics, the scenes would work. But since you're not, the scenes are just that's pretty. That's the problem. That's just the problem of the film, is it's been miscast. And Wachowskis tend to be pretty good at casting before this. They got Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, he was perfect for that character. Emil Hirsch in Speed Race was perfect for that naive character. And he'd been playing edgy guys before that. In Cloud Atlas, they got a lot of actors playing these weird characters and it all kind of worked. But in this one, it just was it seemed they were compromised by their financiers, and it just killed the film. Because there's a lot of good stuff in it. There's a lot of stuff about manipulation, genetics, how genetics might go in the future, which is gene splicing to create people who are different but more advanced. The idea of longevity is a big thing, is a big financing thing, and the only way to really do it is to sacrifice others, which is like an idea of what human beings have always been like with slavery and killing lots of people with your enemies. This time it's done more politely because of the technology now. You just set up gene splicing and set up all these genetics on different planets like Earth and things. Let the population grow, and then as soon as it's at a certain stage, you just kill them all and use their genetic material to extend your own life. It's like it's the rich versus poor. It's a new science version of what's going on, and it kind of is interesting. But if the performances had worked, it would have lifted it a lot more because you would have had a chance to really sense it going through the world. Instead, because Team cannot suggest wolf at all, that world becomes more theoretical. There's also other issues where some of the monsters are like almost dinosaur monsters and things. And a few of them are just they're obviously going back to the old-fashioned monster making of physical monsters and physical beings that look a bit fake, obviously intentionally to be fun. And they come too early in the film, and they can always pull you out of the suspense of the film. When you use those, it just is a step too much. But I think if the performances had worked in the leads, that would have just been a quirk. It wouldn't have been a deal ender. Now because it becomes a deal ender because you're not really invested in the characters. It becomes like another silly thing. And the good stuff in the ideas, which is based on sci-fi ideas, with gene splicing and stuff, doesn't have a chance to really hold on because the performances don't work. The fun thing with the film is the villains. The villains, the three children, they're all fun. They're all enjoyable. They're all manipulated in their own way. One subtly with the daughter. One obvious with the seducer. And then anyway, being this total nutcase. He whispers or yells. He's a problem with his mother because he killed his mother. And he's one Oedipus complex. One giant Oedipus complex. And he's great. He's just way on the top. He's the kind of performance. The villains, they're the kind of performances you really needed in this film. You need more of that to make it really work. And you didn't get it. So this is the Wachowskis' most failed film. The most failed project. But it isn't worthless because it is interesting. There is a lot of cool stuff there. It's just, it doesn't quite come together. But it's still a interesting mess. I'd still rather watch this than a lot of more mainstream successful films, because at least this is weird and intriguing and odd. I'd rather have that than a more commercial success that doesn't really have any ideas. This has lots of ideas. Too many. But I just needed the proper cast in the centre. I needed to be casting people who were right for the past rather than people who were popular at the time. And you need people popular at the time to basically secure the budget. But that was the thing that doomed the film. That's what happens sometimes. Sometimes people, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. I mean, apparently you get really lucky with Keanu Reeves as Neo because he was a name that they would finance the film, they liked the film, and it was for a good fit. And this time they just got unlucky. Because they are ambitious directors, and they're obviously aiming for the moon always. And this one little mistake was a thing that put the cracks in everything else. Because every film has its flaws. It's just that if there's performers you like, it helps you jump over those flaws. You didn't get that here. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This is my last one of the year. I'm now off on holiday. Enjoy. Right. Bye.